So why is the Black Sea so important? Let's have a look at the map of the Black Sea and Russia's occupied areas. Here we have Crimea, Sevastopol, a former Russian Black Sea fleet port, even under times when there was Ukrainian total control over Crimea. Of course, Russia illegally captured Crimea in an almost bloodless attack in 2014. Russia now occupies the red areas we see, but the important piece here is how much of it is up against the coast. This bit from Melitopol up to Mariupol is in the Sea of Azov, which is here, and the Sea of Azov flows into the Black Sea. The Black Sea areas, Russia occupies the southern part of the Kherson Oblast, but Ukraine still occupies in the west out through the vital port of Odessa and round here. But you can see that Russia has captured probably 2/3 of what was Ukraine's access to the Black Sea. The importance for the Black Sea for Russia is a launch pad for projecting power into the Mediterranean, but also up into this region, and through that into the Middle East and into Africa. For Ukraine, it's a vital artery for its economy, especially for grain exports, and now they're limited to coming out of Odessa. Control of the Black Sea means control of critical trade and energy corridors. It is a high-stakes chess match, and every move is critical. Russian naval ports are under pressure. The home, or traditional home, of Russia's Black Sea fleet has traditionally been the port of Sevastopol. No more. Occupied Crimea, but a series of audacious Ukrainian attacks using sea drones, cruise missiles, and as we've seen, other drones have made it a very dangerous place for the Russian Navy. As a result, Russia has been forced to disperse its fleet to other ports, such as Novorossiysk in the southern Russian coast, again out onto the Black Sea, and even a new base in the breakaway Georgian region of Uzbekia. This shows the pressure that the Russian Navy is under, constantly having to look over its shoulder. Before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Russia's Black Sea fleet had about 74 warships, which included surface combatants and submarines. By March 2024, reports suggested that the fleet had become functionally inactive due to heavy losses of vessels, with about 1/3 of Russian ships reportedly sunk or damaged by Ukrainian forces, leading to what has effectively been a strategic retreat from Crimea to ports around Russia. So one of the key battles for the Black Sea in the early days was for the fight around Snake Island, a symbol of defiance. Snake Island is right out just off the Ukrainian coast in the west, the very western vestiges of the Black Sea. Something that if Russia held would give it total control over the unoccupied coastline areas, something Ukraine had held and could use to monitor Russian activities coming out of occupied Crimea and elsewhere. Early in the war, the tiny outpost became a symbol of Ukrainian defiance, with the now famous phrase that we've heard, Russian warship, and this was accompanied by the typical gesture you would expect, go bleep yourself. Unfortunately, I can't use the word as we broadcast it. Ofcom may have something to say. But after a period of Russian occupation, Ukrainian forces, through a series of relentless attacks, forced the Russians to withdraw from Snake Island in June 2022. Not only was this a huge morale boost for Ukraine and a strategic victory, denying Russia key outposts to the control of the northwestern Black Sea area, but also what it did was it allowed Odessa and an international grain deal to continue exports of grain and vegetable oils out of Ukraine to the rest of the world, maintaining Odessa as Ukraine's main maritime gateway. Before the war, Ukraine was a global breadbasket, exporting over 60 million tons of grain a year. Now that equates to about 10% of the entire global market, and it was the world's top exporter of sunflower oil, accounting for nearly half of all global exports. Of course, a lot of these went to third world countries where we see famine, and therefore it was third world countries that were being impacted most by Russian blockades of this area of the Black Sea. The Russian blockade of Odessa at the start of the war sent global food prices soaring. The Black Sea Grain Initiative, brokered by the United Nations and Turkey, was a lifeline to the world, allowing millions of tons of Ukrainian grain to reach the countries in need. However, Russia has repeatedly threatened and ultimately pulled out of the deal, weaponizing food supplies and holding the world's hungry to ransom. Now, Ukrainian success at being able to negotiate this deal with the UN and Turkey, and Russia not being able to influence it even after they withdrew, was purely because Ukraine has managed to continue control over this western part of the Black Sea, and Snake Island was key to that. But also, if we look at Ukraine's activities, at the very beginning, the sinking of the Russian flagship in the Black Sea, the Moskva, was a turning point. No discussion of the Black Sea is complete without mentioning its sinking in April 2022. The flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, the pride of the Russian Navy, it was sunk by 2 Ukrainian Neptune anti-ship missiles. It was the largest Russian warship to be sunk in wartime since World War II, and a massive blow to Russian prestige and naval capability. The commander of the Black Sea Fleet was invited to Moscow to have a meeting with Vladimir Putin without coffee. That means he was sacked. The sinking of the Moskva proved the Russian Navy was vulnerable and set the stage for the naval battles we're seeing today. Remembering the Ukrainians don't have a consistent and clear naval capability. The Russians have one of the strongest naval capabilities in the world. But Russia is not standing alone. Russia hits back in the Danube Delta in the west. It's not all one-way traffic. In a worrying development, there have been fresh reports of Russia turning the tables on Ukraine's own tactics. Moscow claims to have used a sea drone for the first time to successfully attack a Ukrainian vessel. The reconnaissance ship Simferopol was reportedly hit and sunk in the Danube Delta, tragically killing its crew members. It's a stark reminder that this war is a constantly evolving game of cat and mouse, with both sides learning and adapting their battle plans at lightning speed.